They told her she wasn't meant for TV, but she proved them wrong. The lights were blinding, the cameras were cold, and every face in the room looked like a mirror that didn't want to reflect her. Oprah stood behind the silver podium, hands trembling, smile steady. It was her first audition for a major television show in Chicago. The hall was filled with the sound of heels, whispers, and quiet judgments. Mr. Carter, the producer, sat in the front row, his fingers tapping impatiently on the table. "Next," he said flatly, not even looking up. When Oprah stepped forward, the room went silent. Maybe it was her voice, maybe it was her skin. She couldn't tell which one spoke louder to them. "Tell us why you think you can do this job," Carter asked. His tone was smooth, but the words had edges. Oprah took a deep breath. "Because I understand people," she said softly. "I've lived their pain." A few people in the back chuckled under their breath. Linda, the blonde co-host standing near the corner, gave a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. Oprah started reading from the cue card, but halfway through, Carter interrupted. "Stop," he said. "You have something. But I'm not sure our audience will connect with you." The word connect hung in the air like smoke, heavy with meaning. Oprah nodded, pretending not to understand what he meant, but she did. She had seen that look before in stores, in classrooms, even in church. The look that said, "You're not one of us." After the audition, Oprah walked outside into the rain. Sarah was waiting with 2 cups of coffee. "You did amazing," she said. "They just don't see it yet." Oprah smiled faintly. "They never do, not at first." The city lights reflected in the puddles, making it look like the world was crying with her. Later that night, Oprah stared into the cracked mirror in her tiny apartment. "One day," she whispered to her reflection, "they'll hear me." Her reflection didn't smile back, but something deep inside her started to glow, not pride, but purpose. If you believe that voices like Oprah's deserve to be heard, then don't just scroll. Subscribe to this channel because every story we tell is a step against silence. The morning air felt heavy when Oprah entered the studio again. A week had passed since the audition, and she had received a short letter, "You're selected for a trial segment." One chance. Her hands trembled as she held the paper, but her heart whispered, "This is it." The studio looked different today. Lights brighter, eyes sharper. Linda greeted her with a smile too sweet to trust. "Congrats, Oprah. You really surprised them," she said, but the tone carried a shadow. Mr. Carter stood near the cameras, arms crossed, watching every step she took. "You'll be interviewing Senator Howard," he said. "Keep it light, don't go emotional. And remember, our audience prefers familiarity." The last word made Oprah's chest tighten. Familiarity, she thought. He means why the show began. Oprah's voice flowed smooth at first, calm and warm. She asked the senator about his childhood, his dreams, his journey. The audience smiled. Then she gently asked, "Senator, have you ever faced unfair treatment because of who you are?" The question froze the air. Mr. Carter's pen stopped moving. The senator chuckled awkwardly. "No, Miss Winfrey," he said. "That kind of thing doesn't happen to people who work hard." Oprah's eyes flickered for a second. A storm moved through them. She wanted to reply, to say "you just don't see it," but she didn't. She smiled instead, wrapping the pain in professionalism. When the segment ended, the applause felt hollow backstage. Carter's voice thundered. "What was that?" he shouted. "We told you to stay safe, not start a social war." Oprah stood quietly, her hands clasped. "I only asked a question," she said softly. "And that's the problem," he replied coldly. "Our audience isn't ready for your kind of question." Linda walked by, pretending to comfort her. "Don't take it personally, honey. It's just the world we live in." Oprah looked at her, really looked. "That's the world I'm trying to change," she said. That night, Sarah found Oprah sitting on the studio steps, shoes off, rain falling again. "You shook them," Sarah said, smiling. "They're scared because they saw truth." Oprah looked up, rain glistening on her face like tears she didn't want to admit. "Then maybe," she whispered, "it's time they get scared more often." She didn't know that a young technician secretly saved a copy of the interview, the one not meant to air. By the next morning, the tape would find its way to the public, and everything would begin to change. If you've ever felt unheard, unseen, or underestimated, remember Oprah's fire. Don't just watch her fight, join it. Subscribe, and stand for every voice that's been told to stay quiet. Morning broke with chaos. The studio phones wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters were showing up uninvited, camera crews were outside the building, and Mr. Carter's face was red with fury. Someone had leaked the interview, Oprah's interview. The one that wasn't meant to air. The staff lounge, everyone whispered her name like it was a rumor too dangerous to say out loud. "Did you see it?" one said. "She asked that question on live television." Another added, "The audacity. She's finished." But outside the walls of that building, the world had already chosen sides. Some people called her brave, others called her reckless, but everyone was talking about her. Oprah entered the building quietly, holding her bag tight. The moment she stepped in, Carter's voice sliced through the noise. "Winfrey, my office, now." She walked in calmly, but inside her heart beat like thunder. On his desk lay a newspaper, "Young Host Challenges Power on Live TV," her face printed right under the headline. "What were you thinking?" Carter shouted. "Do you understand what you've done?" Oprah stood still. "I asked a question people need to hear." Carter slammed his hand on the desk. "You embarrassed this network. You embarrassed me." Then, after a pause, his tone changed colder, quieter. "You should be grateful we even gave you a seat at that table." That sentence cut deeper than any insult. It wasn't just anger. It was the truth he had been hiding since day one. Grateful, given a seat. Oprah's eyes filled, but she didn't blink. "Maybe," she said softly, "I'll build my own table." He laughed bitterly. "You. They'll never let a black woman run anything on TV." But that night, his laughter would echo back at him through millions of television screens. The leaked tape had gone viral across news outlets. Letters, calls, and messages poured in, people saying, "Thank you for speaking what we feel." Linda watched from the corner, torn between envy and guilt. She had played her role, smiled when told to smile, stayed silent when told to be quiet. But Oprah had done the opposite. She had spoken truth, and truth had caught fire. Later, Oprah met Sarah in a small cafe. Sarah's phone was buzzing non-stop with notifications. "You did it," she said, eyes wide with disbelief. "They can't stop this now." Oprah looked out the window at the rain-soaked street. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way," she said. "But maybe this is how change begins, by accident that isn't really an accident." Somewhere, a little girl would see that interview and realize her voice mattered too. Somewhere, someone would start believing again. If you've ever been told to stay in your place, remember Oprah didn't. She spoke, she rose, she broke the divide. Subscribe and keep her fire alive through every story that fights silence. A month passed since the leaked tape. The chaos had turned into history, and Oprah's name was now everywhere: newspapers, radios, living rooms, and late-night shows. What once looked like the end had become the beginning. Yet inside her, the fear hadn't left. Fame wasn't comfort. It was a test. The network finally called her back. Mr. Carter's voice on the phone was strangely polite. "We'd like you to host a live special," he said. "One night only. The audience loves you." Oprah paused. She could hear what he didn't say. "You bring ratings now." She agreed, not for them, but for every face that once looked away from hers. The studio, that once felt cold, now buzzed with life. Cameras turned, lights glowed, and hundreds filled the seats. Sarah was in the front row, hands clasped tightly in prayer. Linda stood backstage, her eyes soft for the first time. Carter stood near the control booth, pretending to be calm. As the red light blinked live, Oprah stepped forward. The silence felt sacred. She looked into the camera, straight into the eyes of every person who had ever been judged, silenced, or made to feel small. "I was told," she began, "that people like me shouldn't dream too big, that our voices don't fit the screen. But tonight, I'm not just here for me, I'm here for every child who's been told they don't belong." The crowd leaned in, hearts beating with hers. "You are not your pain. You are your power." The applause started slow, then grew louder, rising like thunder breaking through clouds. Carter looked at the monitor, speechless. For the first time, he saw not a risk, but a revolution standing on that stage. Halfway through the show, Oprah invited an elderly black woman from the audience to share her story, a maid who had been fired for speaking up against racism. As the woman spoke, tears rolled down her face. The cameras captured every word, every tremble. When she finished, Oprah held her hand tightly. This, Oprah said, is what truth looks like, and this stage it belongs to everyone. By the end of the night, people across America were crying in their living rooms. Something had changed not just on television, but in hearts. After the show, Oprah stood alone in the empty studio. She looked at the seats, the lights, the floor that once felt like enemy ground. Now it felt like home. Sarah joined her quietly. "You did it," she whispered. Oprah smiled, tears glimmering. "No," she said, "we did. Every person who refused to be invisible. If you believe in standing tall even when the world tells you to kneel, then don't just scroll past this story. Subscribe and be part of the voice that refuses to be silenced, because somewhere out there, another Oprah is waiting for her moment."